There's a specific number in your bank account where money stops being something you protect and starts becoming something that works for you. At that point, you're no longer relying on effort alone. Your money begins to generate more money, quietly, consistently, in the background. But here's the problem. Most people never reach that number. Not because they don't earn enough, not because they don't try, but because they hit a ceiling long before they get there, a frustrating phase where nothing seems to move, where the progress feels invisible, and where it's easy to believe it's not working. So they stop right before everything would have changed. Today, I'm going to show you exactly where that ceiling is, why it feels so slow and discouraging, and the simple math that determines whether your money stays stuck as savings or turns into an engine. The biggest trap in the psychology of money is this. Humans think in straight lines, but wealth doesn't grow that way. We expect that if we do the right things, save consistently, invest regularly, stay disciplined, our results should reflect that effort in a clear, visible way. We expect progress to feel proportional, effort in results out. But money doesn't follow that rule. Wealth grows exponentially. And exponential growth is deceptive because in the beginning, it doesn't look like growth at all. It looks flat. Imagine a graph. For years, it barely moves. It almost looks like a straight line across the bottom. And then suddenly, much later, it starts to curve upward, and eventually it shoots up. But most people never reach that curve because they quit during the flat part. In the first few years, sometimes in the first decade, your progress feels invisible. You're doing everything right. You're skipping the small expenses people joke about. You're trying to save more every month. You're investing consistently, even when it's uncomfortable. You're being disciplined. You're playing the long game. But when you check your account, nothing dramatic is happening. A year goes by. Your balance is higher, but not by much. 2 years go by. Still slow. 5 years in. And it still doesn't feel like your life has changed. And that's when the doubt starts. Is this even working? Why does it feel so slow? Am I missing something? What you're experiencing in that moment is something very specific. It's what I call the investment ceiling. The investment ceiling is the phase where your effort is doing almost all the work, where your contributions, the money you actively put in, are still larger than the returns your investments are generating. And because of that, progress feels slow, painfully slow. Let's make this real. If you have $5,000 invested, even a strong 10% return only gives you $500. That's not life-changing. That's not exciting. That doesn't feel like momentum. So even if everything is technically working, emotionally it feels like nothing is. And this is the trap. Because the system isn't broken. The math isn't wrong. You're just too early. The problem isn't that you're failing. The problem is that exponential growth takes time to become visible. And most people don't have the patience to wait for that visibility. So they stop right in the phase where consistency matters the most. There's a quote from Charlie Munger that captures this perfectly. He said, "The first $100,000 is a total B asterisk TCH. And while it sounds blunt, it's incredibly accurate. Because the difficulty isn't just about earning or saving that money. It's about what that number represents. Let's break it down with simple math. At an average return of 7% per year, if you have $10,000 invested, you earn about $700 per year. That's roughly $58 per month. It's small. It's barely noticeable. Now increase that to $50,000. At 7%, you're earning $3,500 per year. Better, but still not life-changing. Still not enough to feel like your money is doing something meaningful. But at $100,000, something starts to shift. Now 7% gives you $7,000 per year. That's nearly $600 per month. Now your money is starting to contribute. Now it feels like something is happening. And then comes a real shift. At $500,000, that same 7% generates $35,000 per year. That's the equivalent of a full-time salary, without additional effort. This is the moment your money becomes an engine, not just savings, not just security. An engine, but here's the key insight. The hardest part of this entire journey is not going from $100,000 to $500,000. It's going from $0 to $100,000, because that entire stretch is where the math hasn't started working for you yet, where your effort outweighs your results, where your discipline feels unrewarded. That's the ceiling, the invisible barrier that stops most people, not because they can't break through it, but because they don't stay long enough to see what happens on the other side. Most people don't fail because they don't understand investing. They fail because they expect it to feel rewarding too soon. We are wired to expect progress. We want to feel like we're winning, even if it's small, even if it's gradual. We need that feedback to stay motivated. But investing doesn't give you that feedback early on. It asks you to stay consistent, without visible results. And that's psychologically exhausting. So when people don't see a win after a year or two or even 5, they start to react. And usually, those reactions fall into 3 categories. First, they stop investing entirely. They look at their progress and think, this isn't working. So they quit. They redirect their money elsewhere. And they never give the process enough time to compound. Second, they try to speed it up. They take more risk. They chase trends. They jump into things they don't fully understand, hoping for faster returns. And sometimes they lose everything they've built. Third, they lose respect for the small gains. They look at a few $100s in returns and think it doesn't matter, so they spend the principal. They break consistency. They interrupt the process. And all 3 of these outcomes come from the same root problem. They misinterpret the slow phase. They think slow means broken. They think small means useless. They think invisible means ineffective. But the reality is, this slow phase is exactly how the system is supposed to work. Breaking the investment ceiling isn't about being smarter. It's not about picking better stocks. It's not about finding some hidden strategy. It's about one thing: staying in the game long enough to outlast your own frustration, to outlast your own boredom, to outlast a phase where it feels like nothing is happening. If you want to break through the investment ceiling, you have to stop measuring progress the wrong way. You have to shift your focus. Phase 1, the grind 0-100K. In this phase, returns don't matter, not because they're unimportant, but because they're too small to change your trajectory. Your focus should be entirely on your savings rate. If you have $5,000 invested, even a 20% return gives you $1,000. That's great, but it's limited. But if you increase your savings by $500 per month, that's $6,000 per year, 6 times more impactful. In this phase, you are the engine. Your income, your discipline, your consistency. That's what drives growth, not the market. Phase 2, the crossover. This is where things start to change. This is the point where your annual returns equal your annual contributions. For example, if you invest $10,000 per year and your portfolio also grows by $10,000 per year, you've reached the crossover. Now it's not just you doing the work. Your money is helping. This is where the ceiling begins to crack. Phase 3, the takeoff. This is where the shift becomes undeniable. Your returns are now greater than your contributions. Your money is doing more work than you are. At this point, you don't need to push as hard. You don't need to force growth. You don't need to chase returns. You just need to stay consistent and avoid interrupting the process. This is where wealth starts to feel effortless, not because it is easy, but because the heavy lifting has already been done. The investment ceiling isn't a lack of opportunity. It's not a lack of access. It's not even a lack of knowledge. It's a lack of patience for the invisible years. The years where nothing seems to happen. The years where progress feels slow. The years where it's hardest to stay consistent. If you're in that phase right now, you're not behind. You're not failing. You're not doing it wrong. You're just early. And the people who build real wealth aren't the ones who avoid this phase. They're the ones who survive it. They stay consistent when it feels pointless. They stay disciplined when it feels slow. They trust the math before they can see the results. Because eventually, the curve shows up. The growth becomes visible. And everything that felt small starts to compound into something meaningful. So, If you're in that flat part of the graph right now, don't stop. The math is working. You just can't see it yet. And if you want to see the exact accounts, systems, and strategies that can help you reach that crossover point faster, watch this next video. Because once you understand that part, everything changes.